because this person was very well versed and very understood their religion, when they shared with him, he was a little bit thrown. He wasn't prepared for it. The insights and the truths that were shared kind of shook him, and he had to go back and relook at his faith, understand what he believed. And so I want to tell you a little bit about animism. So I've got a PowerPoint presentation as well that will help us. So let's go to the first slide here. First thing I want to talk to you about is, it's important. I'm going to be referring to a worldview. We all have a worldview. Everyone has a worldview. And just a couple of scriptures to begin with. The first one is Proverbs 23 and verse 7, which we know well, says, "As a man thinks within, so is he." As a man thinks within, so is he. And so we realize that the way we think affects our outlook in life, the way we speak and the way we act. And so that's the first scripture there. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. And so our worldview makes a difference in life. How we see things. Until you've talked to somebody, we know that the saying, well, don't judge a book by its cover. Until you've sat down with somebody, spoken out, found out what they've been through and what have you, then only then you get an understanding of where they're coming from. So a worldview is very important. It determines how we view life. It affects a whole number of things in our lives. And so we need to be aware of it. Then the next scripture I've got is Proverbs 4 and verse 23. It says this, it says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." And so it's all about the heart. Everything in our life is determined by our hearts. It's amazing that the issues of life, the things that we feel passionate about, the things that we are for or against or whatever it is, always proceed from our heart. Whether there's forgiveness, whether there's anger, or everything else, those are emotions that come out of our hearts. Those are things that affect us. And so that, in the book of Proverbs, we're encouraged to be aware of what affects our hearts. All right? And Jesus would give us things. He'd tell us, your hearts are hard. You can't understand. That's the reason that Jesus said that was the reason that divorce happened, because of hardness of heart. So everything comes out of your heart. So if you're struggling with something, or you're facing a situation, or you realize your attitude is not quite right, it's a heart issue. It's always a heart issue. It's amazing. I have another scripture there, Mark chapter 7, verses 21 and 22. The scripture says this: "For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come." And he goes on and gives it to us there: "Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly." But it says, it's from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come. Okay, it's not our environment, it's not the environment, it's from within. Okay, so again, everything proceeds or is affected from our hearts. And so, let's go to our next slide here. So everyone has a worldview. That's the world as they see it, that's the world as they perceive it. So everybody has a worldview. In other words, for a worldview are your mindset or your philosophy of life. Everybody has a philosophy, a mindset, or some kind of worldview as to how they see things. And that impacts and affects their beliefs about God, their culture, their practices, their traits, their behaviors, and their activities in life. Your worldview affects how you behave, what you do in life. And so that's the importance of it. Now, one of the things to bear in mind is that a worldview is like having a pair of binoculars. Who's ever used a pair of binoculars? I used a pair of binoculars in September. No, it was October. I used a pair of binoculars in October. I was on a houseboat viewing a game on Lake Kariba. That's where I was. And so what happens is when you look with the binoculars, what it does is it focuses your view. You adjust it, and depending on what you're looking at, the distance between whatever you're looking at, you adjust it, and then you can see that but everything else is blurred. For example, you're looking at something and you can get it into focus and it's very clear, which you can see, but everything else is blurred. And so that's what happens with your worldview. You have a certain focus, and that is very clear, but everything else may be blurred or excluded. And so it's also the same with racehorse blinkers. You ever seen racehorses, whether it's trotting or whatever, different kind of races? They put those blinkers on so that the horse can't see the other horses. All he can do is see straight ahead. So he can't compare himself and look at the guy next to him and say, woo, and get afraid of him or something like that. They don't, he's just looking tunnel vision. He's just looking straight ahead. And so that's how, that sort of affects our worldview. That, we don't know everything. We don't see everything. But everybody has a worldview. And so that's the difference why we don't all believe the same. We don't all agree. Ever come across anybody that you totally agree with? There's always going to be differences because you all have a different worldview. And often, when it's somebody that's from another part of the world or another... I find this. I find when I talk to people that have lived all their lives in the UK, and then I talk to somebody who's lived from another country and come to the UK, they're totally different. Now, because I'm not born in the UK and I come from another nation, I find that when I talk to other people like that, we have something in common. We're like, woo, we're together on this. I find it far easier to engage. I find that the people that have always lived in the UK have a very narrow vision of life. They haven't been exposed to, perhaps as much as others have who have travelled and come to the UK. And so that's part of the, that's something that we see. Let's go to our next slide. Right. Now, all peoples have a sense of right and wrong. All right? All cultures, all peoples have a sense of right and wrong. So Romans 2 and verse 15 tells us this. It says, they, if you go back and you read that passage of scripture, I won't read the whole passage, but they, and if you read further above it, the they refers to those who sin, or all who sin. It says, they show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts, their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometimes accusing them, and at other times even defending them. So what God's saying is, He said He's put it into people's consciences that there is a sense of right and wrong. All cultures, all peoples, there is a sense of right and wrong. Sometimes it's accusing, sometimes it defends them, but God's saying, I've actually put that in place, in people's consciences. The other thing that we see then is Ecclesiastes 3 and verse 11. The scripture says this: He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. So it tells us that eternity is in the human heart. So how many people you speak to, they think they're going to live forever? Maybe you think you're going to live forever. There's a sense of eternity. God's put it in there. Okay, we weren't meant to die. You know, what happened back in the beginning? Man died, separated from God. And so there's a sense of eternity. There's also a sense of right and wrong. And so we need to be aware of it. Now, sin. Let's go to our next slide here. Sin came into the world, and Satan has used deception to hide the truth from us. Okay, that's what sin does. Sin is the desire to be independent of God. Right? And so sin has come into the world and it affects us. And so what is our worldview? I've got a definition of what a worldview is. And so our worldview, as I say, everyone has a worldview, slightly different maybe depending on where you come from, your experiences, what you've learned in life, what you've seen, and what you've experienced, the knowledge you have. All of those things make up your worldview as to how you view life. Our worldview comprises a set of customs and standards which determine our religious beliefs, our social activities, our economic and political structures in nations, including what is possible and what is not possible. Your worldview tells you that. I mean, for example, does your worldview include miracles today? Maybe it doesn't. It depends on what you've learned, what you know, what you believe. All right? Now, I put that next thing that says common sense. Have you ever heard somebody say, what is common sense? I want you today, I want you to know there's no such thing as common sense. Now, in particular community groups, there may be a common sense because it's common to that group of people or their worldview. Perhaps in your family you say, well, it's common sense. We do this in our house, or we do this in our community, or whatever the case may be, but it's different. It's maybe common to a group of you, but not common to everybody. So when somebody says, oh, it's common sense, I'm saying, really? No, hold on. Let's define what is common. Common can also mean familiar. So it's what is common, what's familiar, and all people groups are not the same. So when we use that term, oh, it's common sense, it's, hold on, maybe to that person it is not common sense. Don't necessarily expect somebody to believe, understand exactly what you understand and what you believe. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Right, I'm going to give you a definition of animism. I'm talking about animism today. I spoke about a world belief, because that, our worldview, because that always affects our beliefs. And so what is animism? Who's ever heard that word before? Animism. All right, let me give you a definition. Animism is when you believe more in the spiritual world than in the natural physical world. All right, let me go further on here. Animism, I'll get some more definitions as we go along. Animism originated in the worship of other gods, not in Africa. You ask people, say, where did animism begin? And he says, oh, it was in Africa. Because people from Africa tend to be more spiritual, so they think, animism came from Africa. It didn't. Okay? I'll give you some biblical basis of that now. So when the worship of other gods began, and God was no longer deemed to be the God, the worship of nature and ancestors commenced. Now, let's go to the next slide. Right, let me just give you I just want to read a scripture here to you, just to give you some understanding here. This is the origin of animism. In Romans chapter 1 and verses 18 through 32, I've highlighted a couple of sections here, but I'm just going to go ahead and read it. It says, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Goes on and says, since what may be known about God was plain to them, because God made it plain to them, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. In other words, what God has created, the earth and everything in it, reflects or is a showcase for who God is. That there's order in the universe, that he's created things, and he says that's evident to everybody. He goes on, he says, so that people are without excuse. Scripture then goes and says, for although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God, nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Though they claimed to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of God, of the immortal God, for images made to look like mortal man, being the birds and animals and reptiles. Human beings, birds, animals, and reptiles. Therefore, God gave them over to the sinful desires of their hearts, to sexual morality, for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. The next scripture, carries on and says, because of this, God gave them over to shameful lust, even the women exchanged natural sexual relations for unnatural ones. In the same way, men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. Men committed shameful acts with other men and received themselves the due penalty for their error. Furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to depraved mind, so that they do what ought not to be done. They become full of every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. My goodness. Okay, they invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. And so our worldview, there we see that when God was no longer considered God, that's when the depravity of man came in. And so we see that then man began to look somewhere else. There's eternity in his heart. There's kind of a consciousness of right and wrong. And so he knows there's something more than himself. And so that's what we see from that scripture. Let's go to the next one. Sorry. So continue our definition of animism. Here we go. Everything has a life force or power. That's what animism believes. Trees, stones, mountains, the wind, storms, ancestors, etc. How many of you have ever seen Star Wars? And you know what they say? Trust the Force, Luke. What are they talking about? Animism. Where they believe everything has a life force. Alright? Now, animists do not want to upset the spirit world. Alright? Else the ancestors will take revenge since they participate in the daily lives of family members. Now, what animists believe is that the living and the dead are one community. And so in ancestral worship, those that have gone before, they believe they're active in the current family, and so that's how community exists. It's not just a community of the living, it's a community of the living and the dead. That's the basis of ancestral worship. And so that's what animists believe. Again, to an animist, everything is fear-driven, with consequences of accidents or curses or outcomes. So whatever transpires, whatever happens, there is an underlining fear of, well, if I don't do this, such and such is likely to happen. There's a belief that there's an influence on the affairs and things like that. If certain conditions aren't met, if certain things aren't done, that's what animists believe. Okay, as I said, this is traditional religion. It's called animism. Also, we call folklore. They're different cultures, and whether they're in Europe, whether in Asia, whether in the Americas, these are different things of animism. Now, let's go to our next slide. Animists believe in one supreme being, interestingly enough, that in one supreme being that is the creator, and but this creator has distanced himself from man and cannot be known personally. It's an impersonal supreme being. And the reason he distanced himself from man is somehow there was some angry exchange took place, and so he distanced himself from man. I want you to know, interesting, out of Christianity, man distanced himself from God. Okay? Just to see the difference if you as I was going through this. So you see here that this supreme being cannot be personally known. And as a result, lesser gods are to be worshipped. Now these lesser gods are mediators between man and the supreme being, and the supreme being is the creator, described as omniscient, eternal, beneficent, omnipotent, and righteous, punishing and blessing those who do good and evil. Okay, so they believe there's some kind of intervention by the supreme being, but there are lesser gods that are there that are between man and the supreme being. Now, these lesser gods believed to possess specific powers and are localized to geographical areas. They're territorial. Now, some of you are sitting there saying, okay, I know a little bit about this. If you understand certain cultures and that, there's certain things that are defined as to geographical areas. I am aware of various demonic things that have taken place, and so much so that there's such a territorial, geographical emphasis that demons also prefer to stay in one particular location because they are familiar with it. All right, I've come across a number of those things. But that gives you a bit of understanding regarding animism. Okay, let's go to our next slide here. Now, I'm going to begin to ask you a couple of things and ask you what you believe. Right? Because what I've come to understand is sometimes when there are animistic beliefs, or traditional beliefs, or whatever, we have understanding of certain things, and we bring those into the church. We don't, sometimes it's just we add new knowledge. Our worldview doesn't change, it just gets added another piece. And so, I'm going to ask you a question now. What do you believe here? God has decided your life, you cannot determine it. God has decided your life, you cannot determine it. How many believe that? Is that a true statement? Is it a false? What do you believe? I need to find out here.
I believe that.
How many of you believe that God has that is a true statement? God has decided your life, you cannot determine. Can I see your hands, please? Okay, just checking. How many of you believe that you can decide your life and you can determine it? Put your hands up. And the rest of you are in between. Because some of you are not sure. Is that right? What does the Bible say? Now that comes from a certain, like I say, religious doctrines believe that. Okay, that you cannot determine or change who you are, where you're going to live, what's going on. Let's see what the Bible has to say. So, right on the side. Now let me just mention, there are different worldviews. Depending on what your worldview is, you'll see things here. So religion believes that, believes that God has decided your destiny and you cannot determine it. That's where that thing comes from. Well, that tends to be a Calvinistic perspective. How many know the difference between Calvinism and Arminianism? And we spoke about this last week. Remember, we were talking about Islam, and we said it's important that you know what you believe, your Christian doctrines, and your apologetics. And so your Calvinism is the sovereignty of God. You cannot determine your life. You're either going to get saved, you're not. That's all already been decided, and you have no influence on it. Arminianism is another perspective. No. That's that you have a choice. You determine your way in life, and that's another view. Now, yes, God is sovereign, but there's so which one do you believe? You're all very quiet today, isn't it? It's like, is this too early in the morning for you to be dealing with this kind of stuff? Okay. Religion believes, as I mentioned, God has decided your destiny, you cannot determine. Paganism believes that man is the author of his own destiny. Okay, pagans don't acknowledge God, the living God that we know. They know there's some supreme being, but they believe that they're the author of their own destiny. Humanism believes that I am my own God. We live in that world here today, in Europe. I am my own God. I have my own iPhone, my own iPad, my own, everything's I, and that's who it is. I don't answer to anybody, nobody's the boss of me, and I determine who I am, and that's it. Christians believe God is to be personally known, that he is involved in the affairs of men to make known to them his grace and his forgiveness. God is involved in the daily lives of people, and we don't always see it, we don't always acknowledge it, we don't always even aware of it sometimes, but that's what that's a Christian perspective. Now, can you see the difference in worldviews? So when you talk to somebody in the workplace, from another nation, from another place, it's not common. You think you all have the same understanding? I tell you what, you do not have the same understanding. As until you've seen or experienced something, only then do you appreciate the problem. We had a big session yesterday, and I invited Zoe over before the event, the week before, and I said, Zoe, come and have a look at this. Let me show you the problem. Rather than me telling you and saying, we need to do this, and I said, I showed him the problem. And when everything was falling out of the doors, you opened it, and we couldn't access it, we couldn't find anything, it became very clear. Am I right? Show me, don't tell me? Is that right? That's always a more stronger way to communicate to somebody. Show me, don't tell me. Because then they can see, they go, oh my goodness. Now I understand. I can remember one time I was working on a building project, and I asked one of the guys in the design team to include something. I said, we need to change something. It's not working, it's not right. So I got resistance. Then I invited that person. I said, come, let me show you something. I invited them. I came, I stood with them. I said, now, can you see what I see? And within 5 seconds, there was a response. It was, oh, I get it. I get it. Okay, yes. And we made some changes. But it wasn't until that person saw. I was talking, telling them there's a problem, no response. Until they saw what the problem was, then there was a response. Okay? So that gives you different worldviews. Now, what does the Bible say? So let's get the next slide here. The Bible says we determine our very own success. I've got a couple of scriptures I can think about as well, probably you can too. Proverbs 21 and verse 5 says this: the plans of the diligent lead to profit. So this diligence can make a difference. You can make a difference in your life by being diligent. You can also make a difference in your life by not being diligent. So what you do in life affects your outcome. Okay? Surely as haste leads to poverty. Another scripture in Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 10 says this: whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead where you're going, there is neither working nor planning nor knowledge or wisdom. So if you're going to do something with all your might, you're going to get a result. You're going to get some different responses than if you don't put the diligence in. Okay, it's going to be a different result. Also, Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 19 says this. God speaks to the people of Israel. It says, this day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curses. Now choose life, so that your children, you and your children may live. God gives us a choice. We all have a free will. Well, you probably think of other scriptures that you know that would, I can think of one in Joshua chapter 1 and verse, what's the one where God says to Joshua, he says, meditate on this book of the law. Joshua 1:8 says, meditate on this book of the law. Do not let it depart from your mouth. Keep it on your lips, and because then you'll be able to do it. And then the last part of that verse says, and you will make your way successful. Not God will make your way successful. You will make your way successful. Okay, so now we're leaning towards more Arminianism, is that right? If you came here and you were leaning towards Calvinism, you're leaning a little way like this now a little bit more. Arminianism, you guys need to go study this, okay? But those are some scriptures that tell us that we have a choice in life. The way we live will affect our outcome. How many of you know that? You don't put you up to work for 5 days, something's going to happen. Isn't it? Definitely. Somebody's going to call you, something's going to happen, you're going to lose your job, somebody's going to go. You know, it doesn't just, that just doesn't work like that. Alright? Okay, let's go to our next slide here. Now, again, I'm going to ask you something else you believe. Alright, how about this? Now, by nature, which is man? Good or evil or a little both? How many of you say that man, by nature, is generally good? Let's see your hands. Go. No? Okay. By nature, how many of you that believe that man is by nature evil? Can I see your hands? So you're not sure? How many of you believe a little of both? You think, hey, he's good and he's evil. There's a bit of both. How many believe that? I'm testing your animistic beliefs, right? Some of you don't want to be spoiled. Let's have a look. Let's go to our next slide here. Let's go. Let's see what the Bible says. I want you to know, without Christ, mankind's inclination is towards evil. I'm sorry, that's the truth. That's the truth. Let's see what the scripture says. Genesis 8:21 says this: the Lord smelt the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, this is after Noah, right? Had the flood had come, God had destroyed the earth, and Noah makes a sacrifice, an offering. And it says, the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. Now, if I tell you that about your children, you say, no, they are. Hazel, I know you would. You say, no. My son is perfect. There's nothing. I know you believe that. I'm sorry. It says here, the inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood, and never again will I destroy living creatures as I've done. God reveals our hearts to us here. Another scripture, Jeremiah chapter 3 and verse 25 says this. Jeremiah says this: let us lie down in our shame, and let our disgrace cover us. For we have sinned against the Lord our God, both we and our ancestors, from our youth till this day. We have not obeyed the Lord our God. So yeah, Jeremiah acknowledges. Now you yourselves know. Anybody here without sin? Perhaps that helps us get things in perspective. He said, hold on. We know the inclination of our hearts. Left to ourselves, we're going to proceed down the path of wickedness and evil. That's what I'm saying. Without Christ,